Hey guys, welcome. It is me. I'm Guy Haberman. It is him, David Lombardi. You might be watching this on David's YouTube channel, which is great. Like and subscribe there. Let's all get David to 80,000 subs.
I think that's what Eric Gomes, he's like our top subscriber. He comments more than anybody else. He was talking about 80,000 the other day. I didn't even notice where I was. So I looked and I'm like, damn, it's getting close. So yeah, but I would have to urge those watching on my channel to reciprocate and follow Guy. It's been a while. It's been a few months, but
yeah,
we're back at it now. I think we did a couple earlier this off season, but I kind of lost track of time.
We definitely did one pre-vocal surgery and one post-vocal surgery.
Oh yeah, you can talk now.
I saw.
I
didn't hear from Lombardi for a while after that last stream we did, but all of a sudden my voice gets better and David's interested again. That's fine.
I have this open.
What?
I just had this open in the background on YouTube, and I was getting the echo of us talking 5 seconds later. So okay. I turned that off.
You're good now.
Yeah. Now I can actually hear you. I think that you were alluding to me making fun of your voice or not wanting to do shows with you because of your voice, but it was kind of like
what I was alluding to. Yes,
you sounded like a movie villain. It was great. I had that raspy voice. Now, when was the surgery? So we could put a time.
Now I can't even remember. I mean, 8 weeks ago, probably.
Oh, so this is pretty recent then that we did a show.
9 weeks ago, maybe.
I
don't know. Yeah,
cool. All right, so off season is off and running. We're in the dead period now. It still seems there's a lot of interest, though, because the Brandon Aiyuk situation remains unresolved. Other 49ers big names are floating around in the news. Trent Williams, George Kittle. That was a really rumor-based report from Jeremy Fowler. I don't think he pretended that it was anything firm, but he said that he's heard whispers that Trent Williams might want a new contract. Same with George Kittle. I think that that's just common sense. You put two and two together. Whenever guys reach the portion of their deals that is non-guaranteed, if they're still planning on playing a couple more years and they're good players, they're going to want to make that money guaranteed and maybe tack on a year. It's actually in the team's interest to tack on some time because they can stretch out the cap hits a little bit further. But we just saw it for Christian McCaffrey, right? And this is a guy that we've covered in college and now in the pros. And now, Guy, it seems that 49ers have other stars that they may want to take care of moving forward.
Yeah. So, David, your take is that if Trent Williams wants a new contract next year, then that's great news for the 49ers because it means he's not retiring. I think everybody, myself included, you kind of every year for a couple of years now, you go, well, this might be it for Trent. Mm-hmm. And last year, I thought it was interesting when he was asked directly about it right before the season. He made it clear. He didn't say, like, I'm not leaving, but he basically said, yeah, I'm kind of open-minded about how long my career can be. His age is really the thing. It's not his play. His play, if he falls off this year from the best left tackle to the third best left tackle,
that would be the decline, right? He's still a number one. If you go across the grades and the grades are based on the tape, and I mean, there's several metrics that put Trent Williams at the very top in both pass blocking and run blocking. So he's going to be 36 this year, but we've seen guys. Andrew Whitworth is a great example. He played till I think he was 40 when he retired. So for Andrew Whitworth, it was the Super Bowl, though. He won the Super Bowl and then he said, okay, I've had enough. Now, when you talk to Trent, he lights up whenever he gets to talk about Brock Purdy. So I think that's something that elongates his career. That's already maybe elongating his career. He really obviously believes in Kyle Shanahan, somebody who he played for before in Washington. But in the NFL, it's the quarterback coach battery that's most correlated with winning titles, right? And Trent Williams is really smart. Trent Williams knows how this works in the big picture. He knows they have the coach, and I think that he believes they have the quarterback as well. And if a guy's going to go back out there year after year after year, it certainly helps to have both of those pieces in place to give him hope every single season that they're going to be playing very, very late into it.
I'm sure not everybody feels this way, but have you ever, I'm sure you have, most people probably listening or watching this have met somebody, or maybe you are this person, but I've had it happen where you meet somebody who's like in their 60s or their 70s, and they say something along, just older, right? Past the midway point of their life. And they say something like, you know, this is actually my favorite part of my life. And then they'll tell you why, for whatever, their comfort, their happiness, whatever it is. And I look at Trent and I'm like, think about his career. He started, more than half of his career was spent on one of the most dysfunctional organizations in recent American sports history, losing a bunch of games, almost never or never playing in the playoffs. Now he gets to practice basically when he wants. He plays for maybe one of like 3 coaches that he wants to play for, right? The reason the Niners got a great deal on the trade for him is because he wanted to play for Kyle when he almost left as a free agent. Where was he going to sign? With Andy Reid. Okay, this guy has champagne taste. He's earned it. He gets a locker room unto himself. Like he gets a red rope around his 2 lockers.
3. It was up to 3 by now.
3 lockers. Okay.
It was 4 at one point. He had one of those minor lockers. He had 2 of them, and then they signed somebody. They didn't have room, so they took one away.
He
eminent domain.
The only downside to his location is that a basketball hoop is like taped to one side of his locker. He's near the basketball court.
Yeah, but they have the shield in there now.
Doesn't seem to bother him. He plays with people, like he plays with contemporaries, right? He plays with Bosa, McCaffrey, Fred Warner, George Kittle. He plays with other guys on his level, which you can't say for most players of his caliber. It's hard to find other players of your people who understand from a financial standpoint, from an attention standpoint, from a stress standpoint, from from everything. So he's got this incredible situation. He doesn't seem like he's in a rush to leave it. As long as he's playing at this level, the 49ers don't want him to leave it. So I did not interpret Jeremy Fowler. Jeremy Fowler did not say he wants to get paid today or before the season. So to me, that whole thing sounded pretty positive from a Trent Williams perspective.
No.
And maybe he wins the Super Bowl and says that's enough, but
I don't think people understand quite how advantageous the league's finances are right now to the 49ers keeping this team together. And as long as Jed is willing to spend the guaranteed money, the 49ers are in a fine cap situation because the cap is going up by so much. And we've seen it with so many of their deals. We saw it big time with Bosa last year. We just saw it with Christian McCaffrey's extension. We saw it with Jawan Jennings' deal. Even though it's a 2-year deal, they're just backloading the hell out of these contracts. And they can get away with it because the cap is going up. And somebody commented saying, I wouldn't do this with my mortgage. And it's like, well, there's no interest here. This is not your mortgage. This is different. This is just, you could just pay this later and you could pay the exact same price later, except later there's way more cap space to deal with. So if you're willing to dish out the guaranteed money, which prorates against the cap, it's like an accordion, you could stretch it out over the future, you can afford it. So the only, way to look at this, it's very binary, good or bad news. Good news, Trent Williams wants to keep on playing and he's one of the top tackles, if not the top tackle in football. That's great news for the 49ers because they can figure out a way to pay him given the way that the cap is growing. Bad news is Trent Williams wants to retire. Some people, I saw some just completely asinine comments saying, oh, they better hope he retires soon because they're not going to be able to pay anybody. And it's like, you're probably the same person that's complaining that the offensive line isn't up to your standard. And you're hoping that one of the best left tackles in the game retires. It makes no sense at all. So again, you made the point at the start. Great news for the 49ers if he wants to stick around because he loves it so much in that building.
And I think let's talk about Kittle and then we can get to something Aiyuk actually said today. This is an interesting year. I mean, they always are interesting years for George. This will be an interesting year, particularly if all the receivers are healthy and you want to get Ricky Pearsall some targets and you've got, you maybe not McCaffrey gets fewer targets. What do you bring in potentially a tight end too? One of my takes post minicamp, David, has been that I think I enjoy talking about Logan Thomas and Mason Pline does look good to me. I don't want to blow him up, but I think tight end 2 might be the most over talked because tight end 2 caught 5 combined balls last year. Tight end 2, I don't think Logan Thomas is going to be I think it's very unlikely that that's an impact spot for them this year.
Well, I think that's the problem, though, is that Charlie Warner caught 11 balls in 4 seasons. And as you said, only 5 last year. I think they want a little bit more, at least, of a threat receiving wise.
Yeah, I mean, I would love a little more of a threat too, but how many targets is Ricky Pearsall going to get? I mean, Juwan Jennings is catching less than 20 balls. Brandon Aiyuk is going to want Debo, McCaffrey, Kittle. Like, okay, if we're going to are they just going to throw the ball more? That's been one thing I've heard from people. Yes, they're going to throw the ball more. They were 27th in attempts last year. So they're going to throw the ball more.
You saw the playoffs, though, right? It was Mike sent these numbers to me a couple months ago. 109 pass attempts and something like, 109 pass plays called because Purdy scrambled quite a bit. And it was in the 70s for runs. And people will run and say, well, they were behind. It's like, they weren't behind for as long as you thought they were. They were, of course, they were down 24-7 in the NFC title game, but they erased it really, really quick early in that second half. It was a flurry, right? So that game was played. I mean, they didn't abandon the run in that game. Let's just put it that way. They were never behind so much, so late that they had to abandon the run. Packers game was even. Chiefs game, they're leading for a good part of it. So they were never in a position to where they had to just give up on running the ball, and they still called way more pass plays than they did run plays in the postseason. And maybe that helps your argument here with tight end 2. Maybe tight end 2 not as important anymore because this is a more pass-centric team with Brock Purdy. And I think definitely helping the argument of pass centricism is the fact that you do have Pearsall, Aiyuk, Debo, Kittle, McCaffrey. You have so many weapons, right? And then you have the QB now to operate like that if you're the 49ers. So I think the postseason was a great snippet into what this team is going to be moving forward.
Yeah, I'm not in a big rush to become a top 10 if I'm them. Like, what they do works. It keeps the quarterback healthy. It keeps the defense off balance. I'm not in a big rush to become a top 15 passing volume offense just so Logan Thomas can catch 30 balls. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not in a rush to rearrange this whole thing. I like Ricky Pearsall, David. I think he's looked good. I think he's going to be my expectation of him not confirmed. My expectation when they drafted him was I think he's a high floor player. I feel that way after minicamp. I'm not in a rush to give him 15% of Aiyuk's targets though either, right? Like, I think there's this big jump that's being made to, Ricky Pearsall looked really good. He's about to do X. I think it's more like Ricky Pearsall looked really good. If they need him, hopefully he can be ready to perform. And once or twice a game, maybe it'll be the Chris Conley ball, right, from the NFC Championship game. Maybe it'll be some Ronnie Bell ball. Maybe it'll be some ball that Danny Gray didn't catch. Ricky will be ready for all those spots. And that's, I think, his ideal role this year.
Yeah, he starts as a luxury, right? Assuming Brandon Aiyuk is back, ready to go. Deebo Samuel's back, ready to go. You still have Kittle. You have all those guys. He's a luxury that you could lean on more if and when you have injury issues. And let's be honest, these are marathons. The 49ers have played 3 straight 20-game seasons. That's 60 games in 3 years. One of the big concerns with a team like this, especially one that hasn't gotten the boost of a Super Bowl win, is, when does fatigue start to really kick in, the long-term fatigue? So the goal this year, entering the draft and also before that free agency, was to revitalize, especially the depth of this roster with a youth infusion, right? With fresh legs, with guys who are going to be able to give you that boost at game 16, 17. You're going to Green Bay and then Buffalo with a trip back to the West Coast for Thanksgiving in between those 2 games in the cold. I mean, it's going to be really important to have the troops to be able to do this. And I think that's where Ricky Pearsall begins his career. That's a perfect learning spot, right? And then he could evolve into a starter. Then they can start making their decisions after this season on the future of Deebo Samuel. And he's under contract for 2 more years. But why make that choice now? Why not just live with the embarrassment of riches that you have on the roster if you're indeed going to try to make a run to win this marathon?
What did you make of Albert Breer's report the other day? Essentially that, it was kind of open-ended on Debo. It wasn't really anything direct, but it just continued to push the ball down the road. That report's a strong word. Just continued to push the ball down the road that, like, maybe there would be a trade for Deebo sometime in the future. What'd you make of that?
Well, again, I think the 49ers have operated the same way with the business mindset from 2017 to now under Shanahan and Lynch. And I think its optionality is huge for them. They want to arm themselves with as many different choices as possible. So that way, if they are offered something great, then they can hop on it. I don't think that there is a very high likelihood that Deebo Samuel is going to be somebody's going to offer something for Deebo Samuel that makes it worth the 49ers while to move him off their roster. I just watched the State of the 49ers YouTube that they put out there, and the way that John Lynch talked about Deebo Samuel at the NFC Championship game. Lynch went down to the locker room for the first time ever as a GM at halftime when they're down 24-7, and he just talked about how he made eye contact with Deebo Samuel in the locker room, and Deebo told him, just tell him to give me the ball. And John got chills from it. That's not the way that you talk about some kind of dispensable piece from your team, right? Like, of course, they're going to be ready to listen to anything, the 49ers. I mean, they made the call about Aaron Rodgers in 2021, right before they drafted Trey Lance. I heard something that they were inquired about Justin Jefferson. They leave no stone unturned. You should try to maximize your chances, maximize your options, even if the probability is really small. So same deal with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Aiyuk. I don't think that they have a preset determination of who's going to be on the roster next year or 2 years from now. But there's a really good chance, in my opinion, that Deebo Samuel plays out his entire contract with the 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk gets extended and Ricky Pearsall stays around. I don't think that's 100% chance. I don't even know if it's about over 50%, but I think it's a good chance. I think that there's a good percentage possible for each outcome. And the 49ers are going to let how this season plays out, what offers might come in. They're going to let that dictate how they act when the moment actually necessitates action.
When it comes to phone calls, remember that this marriage between Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch started with a phone call and a conversation that seemed unrealistic when it started, right? John Lynch saying to Kyle, what about me as your GM? And Kyle going, oh, interesting, right? So this whole thing started with what would have seemed like a crazy idea. And if you just remember that, anytime you see a story like the Niners called about Aaron Rodgers, like, well, yeah, I mean, the way they made their match was bizarre. The Niners took calls on Deebo. I mean, yeah, John Lynch called Kyle Shanahan and said, what about me? Right. So that's just keep in mind, like the mindset of John Lynch is they called about Tom Brady. So that's the whole thing. Like the genesis of this marriage is not a random phone call. I think that's a little too poetic because these guys obviously know each other and have a connection and Mike Shanahan and all that.
Yeah.
But out of nowhere, John Lynch became a general manager because he had the idea and suggested it to Kyle. And Kyle was open-minded enough to say, and without a GM enough to say, oh, let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think the best descriptor is open-minded. They've been open-minded to any idea, and it would be absolutely foolish to predetermine a course of action and not be open-minded right now with something like the Deebo Samuel future or the Brandon Aiyuk future, right? George Kittle, Trent Williams, these are all really good players who obviously have big contracts and are going to demand more big money moving into the future. So there are salary cap realities, but I think the 49ers optionality has only grown with the NFL's revenue. This was the most lucrative jump that we'd seen ever in the NFL salary cap, $30.4 million jump this past year, which gives the 49ers hope that it's going to continue making huge increases moving forward, given the way the business is going. And that gives them options with all these high-priced players into the future.
All right, you want to talk about Aiyuk, about the latest Aiyuk here?
Yeah. This was really interesting. Put that up on the screen. This is from Brad Graham, good guy at the SF Niners. And Brad has verified that this quote is real. It came out from some Aiyuk Daily account, but Brandon Aiyuk said, "My home is here. My family is here. Everything I know is here. I want to be a 49er beyond this season." So that would break the silence from Brandon Aiyuk. it's funny because early on in this process, we had actually heard from him. I think he was with Keyshawn Johnson, I believe, on a podcast, or was it Chad Ochocinco? I think it was Chad Ochocinco's podcast. Yeah. And
Yep.
he's Brandon Aiyuk straight up said, I want a deal to get done. Well, and we'll see if both, agents on both sides can come together and finish a deal. I think I was on your show and we talked about that. And you said, he's the worst negotiator ever. He came out and he said exactly what he wants. He wants to be with the 49ers. Then he went radio silent and then he stopped, but it was, there were conflicting reports. It seemed that Aiyuk said on one of his podcasts straight up, I just got back from the facility. I was there. Somebody else,
Right.
It might've been Christian McCaffrey, said, I just saw Brandon Aiyuk at the facility. Maybe it was Purdy. And then all of a sudden, John Lynch said, no, he hadn't been here at all in the offseason. So nobody was really sure if he had set foot in the building or not. But I thought that Aiyuk himself had directly said that. Then obviously there was that month plus long stretch where he didn't talk at all. And he definitely wasn't in the facility. We could verify that because we were there and he wasn't there. Now all of a sudden we have this. And it comes a few days after the whole Justin Jefferson deal dropped. And I don't think that did anybody any favors outside of Justin Jefferson. Because we talked about this, I think, over text, or I think maybe we're on the field last week talking about this guy. That Jefferson deal was such an outlier in terms of size of the fully guaranteed money is what I'm looking at. That, yeah, the receivers can look at that and hope that their respective teams award a contract close to that big, but they're probably just going to be left hoping. It's probably just going to create frustration, and it creates frustration for the teams because the receivers are pointing at the Justin Jefferson contract, even though they're not compelled to go there. So to me, that might have been a bit of an inflection point last week in that it created a little bit more polarization, a little bit more frustration from both parties. And maybe Brandon Aiyuk saying this is him saying, well, I'm frustrated at this point. I want to move this forward. His name is getting dragged around on social media. It seems like the fan base might be turning on him a little bit. I think this is Brandon Aiyuk's way of saying that he's frustrated and he wants to shield himself a little bit and make it clear that he does want to remain with the 49ers.
Yeah, and I think generally, it's probably not even worth addressing. I think most people recognize whatever his value is, that he has a value to the Niners. But I think when you're a player in his position, your DMs and your people start tagging you and stuff, and maybe it feels like you're suddenly unwanted. But I don't think that's generally the case with him. But I do think it's interesting that he has this Aiyuk daily, which I see these on Instagram all the time, like curries every day, and I'm just like, they have photos in a lot of these types of accounts that I don't see anywhere else. So they must be internal to some degree. Whether they are or not, in this case with Brandon, I'm not sure. I don't know if you know, but
I'm not sure. I do know that Brad tweeted out that he verified that Aiyuk actually said this.
Yeah, and I believe,
Brad,
I'm not. I don't know. I believe Brad
itself. I don't know.
Yeah, I believe Brad. I have just noticed this increase in these types of accounts, and I do think they're largely internal account. Like I do think they are run by these athletes' people. But anyway, just think about this. Why? I understand this desire to be 100 catch guy. And I'm not saying I'm sure he has it. Every receiver has it. That's how you get paid. Now he might get paid by not being 100 catch a year guy. But he has become an NFL star by playing for the 49ers. Would he be a bigger star if he played for the Steelers and they made him their number one target? Maybe, but now he's playing with a rotating door of they had the worst offensive coordinator in the NFL last year when the Niners played him, and then he was gone by the end of the season. They've got a quarterback problem and have had a quarterback problem since the end of Ben Roethlisberger's career. So in theory, you can go, yeah, I'd rather be a Jag. I'll get more targets, or I'd rather be a Steeler. I'll get 90 balls. Well, okay, but would you be a bigger star than you are on this team? And I don't think the answer to that is yes.
I mean, it's not just about target rate and catch rate. It's about the brand that you're with. And the 49ers set all kinds of records jersey sale wise last year. They sold, according to that fan ticket tracking website, they sold like 50% of the tickets to 49ers fans at road games on average over the course of the entire season. He's surrounded by so much.
Wait, I'm sorry,
power.
David. Say that again. The Niners sold.
The opposing stadiums were filled with, on average, 49.5 or 49.8% 49ers fans across the 8 49ers road games last year, according to one of those seating
tick pick or something.
Tick pick or something. And I was at all the road games, and I could verify that many of them were well over 50%. Some were under, but even Pittsburgh had probably close to 25% 49ers fans. So I believe that it actually did average out to about 50%. But anyway, all this stuff speaks to how strong the 49ers brand is right now. And one of the reasons it's so strong is because they have so many star players on the team. So the very force that causes Brandon Aiyuk to get a lower target share is also something that makes being with the 49ers such a great thing for his own brand, his own business. It's like being on the Yankees in baseball. That's going to be a whole lot more valuable to you, a whole lot more eyeballs on you than playing out in Jacksonville, right? So, and then on top of that, from the strictly football aspect, he's got Brock Purdy throwing to him instead of, it was Kenny Pickett in Pittsburgh. It's going to be Russell Wilson now, I guess, allegedly. Did you see that? This is a non sequitur, but their special teams coordinator joked that they might use Justin Fields on kick returns, and people took it seriously. Like the aggregators took it seriously, and it got out there. But anyway, that's how things are going in Pittsburgh right now. But my main point is that Aiyuk's, I think by far the best situation for him is to sign a long-term deal for the 49ers. I mean, the best situation for his brand. I mean, he might be able to get some more money elsewhere, but if we're talking about more than just the paycheck, we're talking about the brand. I think that the 49ers situation right now is a really, really good one for him.
A comment here on YouTube from Astro. He says, Al Guido said 48% according to Vivid Seats. The only thing I think when I see an Al Guido quote is when Jay Feely did a sideline hit during the Tom Sula era. And he said, I just talked to Al Guido here on the field, the CEO of the Niners. And he started getting into it. And then somebody brought up to Tom Sula, the Jay Feely had talked to Al Guido. It's like this game of telephone. And Tom Sula he's like, Jay Feely, the kicker? Al Guido? The whole thing was so bizarre, but
I believe Tom Sula is still coaching the Rhine Fire. And
he just won a championship last year, I think.
Yeah, they did win the championship. It's no longer the NFL Europe. It's not the same franchise that the Rhine Fire of the NFL Europe was, but they've called it's the European League of Football, the ELF. And they've resurrected those NFL Europe franchise names. So Tom Sula won the title with the Rhine Fire.
Gotcha. Okay. Where were we before we? Oh, Aiyuk,
yeah. So did you agree with me? I think that going out to be in Jacksonville, there's no way that on a brand level
on a brand level it's not close. I mean, I think what'll be interesting is that I think, when is CeeDee Lamb going to sign? Because CeeDee Lamb is the guy on the high end of catches, right? He led the league in catches last year. So there's a big gap between, I don't know, what did he have? Like 180 or he had some ridiculous number of catches last year.
Yeah. He was targeted heavily.
He was heavily targeted, right? So to me, it'll be interesting if CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Aiyuk, if CeeDee Lamb comes in at a number that's closer to the group than it is to Justin Jefferson, 135 catches for CeeDee Lamb last year. If he comes in to a number that's closer to the group, then Aiyuk can get a contract that's near the group. You can look at it and go, oh, okay, I can get a contract near CeeDee Lamb, and I can do it with 50 fewer catches, right? Like he had 50 fewer catches. No, 60 fewer catches than CeeDee Lamb last year. I think he had 75 and CeeDee had 135. He had 75 and CeeDee had 135. Okay. So, I think that's realistic. I think wherever CeeDee Lamb is, if he's near the group, I think Aiyuk will be near him. And I think it'll be proof that just getting the most targets, you can get comparable money with far fewer receptions because everything that Niners do is about the weight of the play, right? The weight of a pass play is very important for the 49ers. When Brock drops back to throw the ball, it's a very, very, very important play. It's an incredibly critical play. It happens frequently.
And he's not just getting paid for how many times he runs a pass pattern.
Right.
You're also going to be trying to compensate him for how good of a run blocker he is. And it all works within the larger picture of the offense. So it's not like he's not getting paid for the plays where the ball isn't even going into the air. I think we have to factor that in as well. And that's probably something that's part of these negotiations.
Where do you think his money, where are you at with this?
There's piece and here. I think that this still holds up well. I'm going to send it to you in the
private chat
that we have. Yeah. Here you go. I'm going to go. Yeah. Private chat. So I projected his contract on April 3rd. So it's been over 2 months. I could also send you a little screenshot. I don't know if you're logged in yet. Oh, you are. Good. So keep on scrolling down pretty far. Right there. Up again. Up a little bit more. Back to, yeah, there you go.
This one?
There. Yep. That's the contract. I'm at 25.7 million a year is what that comes out to, but I put the structure and everything up there. You know me, I repeat this over and over and over again. The APY doesn't really matter to some receivers. It might matter as a vanity number. And if that's all they care about is an empty APY, and to some degree, Amon-Ra St. Brown's deal has that. Tyreek Hill's deal had a little bit of that as well to get up to 30 million. If that's what they care about, the team will happily give that out through a massive number in later years. That doesn't really, the chances of it being earned aren't very high. What really does matter, though, is the fully guaranteed money, which is why Justin Jefferson's deal is so far ahead of everybody else's. 35 million may not seem like that much more than 31 or 32 or whatever the hell the high water mark was before it. But Jefferson was at 88.7 million fully guaranteed. Tyreek Hill's at 52.5. That's a massive increase. It's 69% higher. So I had 25.7 per year because I don't think that Aiyuk cares that much about APY. But in
why do you think
fully guaranteed money, I had 52 million. I had a $30 million signing bonus, a $20 million guaranteed option bonus, and then 2 guaranteed base salaries. All the shaded stuff is fully guaranteed. That adds up to 52. Are the 49ers willing to get up to 52, or are they kind of dawdling around in the low 40s? Amon-Ra St. Brown was only at 34 million fully guaranteed for comparison. I think the Amon-Ra St. Brown deal, the 49ers would be happy to do it.
I don't think
Aiyuk would be.
Yeah. So 2 things. One, why do you think, I'm inclined to agree with you, but why do you think Aiyuk doesn't care about APY, the average per year? Just because he's a thoughtful guy? He's quiet?
Well, everybody wants what's actually the
real money.
I would think.
So you think he's smart, is what you're saying?
He might care about APY on a more superficial level, but if he does, it won't be a deal breaker. If he just wants an inflated APY for the hell of it, okay, fine. Go have fun with your $52 million base salary that you'll never earn in 2028. They could do that, right? They did that with Tyreek Hill. They put I think his number for the last year was like 45 million or something like that. Amon-Ra St. Brown has got this option bonus that's not guaranteed that kicks in the very last year that effectively raised his APY from 26 million to 30 million. So, I mean, it's only up to the team if they pick up that option in the last year. And in all likelihood, the contract will get renegotiated before then. So that money is irrelevant. So that's why I don't like talking APY, because these numbers can be so easily manipulated. In the case of Justin Jefferson, it's a pretty damn real 35 million.
Yeah.
Justin Jefferson's deal, it looks like they just copied Nick Bosa's contract and added on a few bucks because Bosa was 34 million per year, 88 million fully guaranteed. Jefferson's 35 million per year, 88.7 million guaranteed. I think that's what they did because they wanted to be the highest non-quarterback. Right. And the highest paid non-quarterback was Bosa. Now it's Justin Jefferson.
The other difference between the Amon-Ra deal and the Aiyuk deal, and I have to give credit, Josh Dubow came up to me at practice the other day and he said, I think you have to look at the Amon-Ra contract differently when you compare it to Aiyuk, is that, Aiyuk is on that 5th year option making $14 million this year. Amon-Ra was making 1.3. He was not a first round pick, right? So there's like a $12 million gap between the two of them already. So like Aiyuk's got to at least be $12 million more than Amon-Ra just based on that.
Yeah, his leverage point is higher, right? So exactly. But he's also constrained, as we thought all of these contracts should be. They should be constrained by the amount that would cost to franchise to keep the player on his 5th-year option without giving him a deal, and then franchise tagging him twice. For Aiyuk, I put it in the article. I forgot what it was, but it comes out to something like 25 million a year, maybe 24. That's what theoretically should keep all of these contracts reasonable.
The 24 tag is 21.8, likely to be marginally higher in 25. Could we say that it's going to be more than marginally higher next year now that Justin Jefferson signed that contract?
Yes, because the average is out the top 5 contracts, so it should be higher. But
sorry, I thought this was on the
probably not. So what you would do is you would take the 14 this year. Say that you don't give Brandon Aiyuk a new contract. Say that you just make him play out the 5th-year option and 2 franchise tags. That's 14.1 plus whatever next year is going to be. Maybe let's just say 24, right? Does that sound right? That might jack up the average a couple million, the Jefferson deal, plus 120% of that, which would be over 25 million. So actually that's in the low 20s on average. And that's why the players hate the franchise tag, because teams ultimately have the nuclear option of not offering them a deal and then just doing this over and over again. Now, there's incentive to avoid the franchise tag from both sides, which extends beyond keeping your employees happy. Teams also like to have more control over the cap hit. So the 49ers can't run their accordion bonus structure, pushing money into the future if they're just using rigid franchise tags. So they're incentivized to do something different than the franchise tag. And obviously so is Brandon Aiyuk. But the nuclear option of the franchise tag does remain. It was fascinating to me to see Minnesota in the exact same position as the 49ers contractually with Justin Jefferson, award him a contract that was so far and beyond any of the anchor constraints of the franchise tag, of the 5th-year option and 2 franchise tags. They didn't have to give him a deal that big. They held way more leverage than that, but they did. That, I think, shocked a lot of league insiders. I don't think it made anybody happy around the league except for Justin Jefferson. Maybe the Vikings. I don't know why they'd be happy about paying more than they had to, but that happened. And that's why I think it's going to be treated as an outlier.
I heard somebody say that the percentage of the cap is comparable to like the big Larry Fitzgerald, his big contract, Calvin Johnson's big contract. Maybe with a rookie quarterback and Sam Darnold, they were incentivized to get him to make sure that he's there for camp and that he's not holding out. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only way they're able to do it is because they're moving to a new young quarterback. So they're going to have that. They're at the start of the rookie stopwatch or timer or clock, whatever you call it. So that window is opening. So yeah, maybe there's a little bit of that. Like, hey, we're going to really reward you now. We need you to be a really good soldier for the development of this rookie quarterback, JJ McCarthy. I still think they were bidding against themselves. I mean, to me, it's staggering. Again, I go back to the fact that it went from 52.5 million to 88.7, just like that. 70%. we haven't seen a jump like that at any position, even with the biggest quarterback.
No, it's like the position didn't matter.
Yeah. They were bidding. They were bidding or working the contract around Bosa.
I think your Bosa points ago. Imagine if the tight ends could operate that way, or what we'd see.
I think in the larger picture, it's time to just scrap, and this goes more to McCaffrey and to tight ends. I hope at some point we see him scrap the franchise tag delineation between positions and just have offensive weapon, because that's the way the game is played now.
Just
Kittle's lining up out wide. McCaffrey's as big of a impact in the pass game as he is in the run game. It's not fair to running backs and tight ends, and it might be too generous to receivers right now, right? So I think you want to eventually level the playing field.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it and it's not really about the tag, right? It affects the actual contract they get. Few players actually end up playing on the tag. I've got another. What you got on the topic? What something else you want to talk? I mean, we have things here, but I was gonna. If I got one in the holster here if you want.
Go ahead. Yeah, you're good. Let's let it flow freely. I love it.
All right, I'm going to let it flow.
Let's go.
I actually am interested. I don't know if this is too granular, but I'm interested in whether or not Elijah Mitchell ends up available as a trade candidate in a month and a half. And it's something that people have asked me a lot about, and it seems like it's a popular conversation. And maybe it's because the Niners have done it in the past, but I don't think they're ready for that. I don't think they will be ready for that. I don't. The odd thing about watching rookie minicamp, and major caveat, they weren't wearing pads, so it's barely football especially when it comes to linemen and like running backs. But even quarterbacks. I mean, you're not hitting the quarterback. That's kind of a major factor of the sport. But all that said, I thought the guy that was the undrafted running back, Cody Schrader, looked to me like he ran the ball better than the guy they drafted, Isaac Guerendo, who looked like a nice pass catcher. And maybe I'm putting too much stock in anything that I saw. But what I'm saying is, I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves if we're looking for a reason for the Niners to trade Elijah Mitchell for, I don't know, a 5th round pick. I don't really see the value when we talk about the cavernous gap between historic productivity in Elijah Mitchell and all the other running backs behind him on the depth chart.
It's way too early to be seriously considering it now. It's something that I've talked about just as a projection. If Schrader balls out, if Isaac Guerendo looks really good. I mean, you have a potential logjam there, but everybody always gets so excited about what they see on paper at this time of the year, and then they forget that this is one of the toughest positions to stay healthy at in the NFL. 49ers have run out of running backs before. It was really bad. 2021, they had to move Deebo Samuel to the position. That saved the season for them. So it never plays out the way that it just looks like on paper. You have to be ready for the actual game of attrition to happen, and it's going to be a battle of attrition over the course of the season. So you have to make sure that you're entering that season with the requisite amount of bodies, the requisite amount of capable bodies at the running back position. Now, they have traded running backs they have deemed as excess talent before. Matt Breida for a 5th round pick. I believe that was to Miami, right? Because Jeff Wilson was to Miami as well. So maybe they could trade somebody else it would be Elijah Mitchell next. I know that Mike McDaniel likes him to the Dolphins, but I think the going rate each time was a 5th round pick, and it could happen downstream in the middle of the season, right before the deadline, like it did with Jeff Wilson, or it could be more of an off-season deal like it was with Matt Breida. But you cannot make any of these suppositions now because, yeah, Cody Schrader looked like he had good vision and he was one of the top running backs in the SEC, but we need to see him with pads on. We need to see him in preseason. Even the padded practices, they don't tackle to the ground, right, in training camp. And that's a huge indicator of how good of a running back somebody is how well he breaks tackles to the ground. So with Cody Schrader, we need to see him in preseason games. With Isaac Guerendo, I think Schrader there might be some comparisons to Brock Purdy, and as he didn't test great, but he has a ton of high-level college experience, so he might actually be a little bit ahead of Isaac Guerendo now. Whereas Guerendo, raw prospect, but extremely good measurables. We need to see how he develops. You can't just determine right now how good Isaac Guerendo is going to be. And then you can't forget about Patrick Taylor Jr., who I think is an awesome pass protector. He's one of the tallest backs they've ever had, 6'2", going on 6'3". So he's got some potential just with that big frame, he's got some potential to do some interesting stuff for the 49ers. And then obviously Elijah Mitchell, and I haven't even mentioned Jordan Mason. So the room is loaded with talent, but until attrition starts taking a little bit of hold and development starts taking a little bit of hold, who are we to say what they're going to do? Again, this goes back, Guy, to the optionality that I talked about earlier. They have the options, so now they have to react based on what actually happens.
The counter, and I'm on this. I would keep Elijah Mitchell unless these guys really go above and beyond in a way that proves to you need to keep them all, and you don't want to get rid of them all, or you think you can't get all of them to practice squad or whatever the case is. But the counter to that would be, well, history tells us Mitchell's going to get hurt. So while he's healthy and while you're deep, trade him and get something for him. I understand that. I think that's logical. I also think that history tells us there's probably a game a year where you're just not going to have McCaffrey. And you need a dynamic, like Elijah is a dynamic running back and a trustworthy running back, which might be the most, if we had Kyle's list of important traits, trustworthy might be number one. Can pick up pressure, can block, protect the quarterback, and protect the football. So I don't see the value in getting a 5th round pick for Elijah Mitchell, because that's based on what now maybe does he get you something else? Does he get you a 4th? Is he a better trade chip than Matt Breida?
I think he could be a number 1 somewhere else if he stays healthy.
He could, of course.
That's no question of all time, right? Because
but what is a number 1 somewhere else worth in the trade? What is that worth to somebody in a trade?
Not much more than a 5, because maybe a 4, but again, their priority.
Actually, I know who to call.
You what?
Based on the trade they did with Dallas last preseason, I know who to call.
Yeah, you know who to call. Jerry Jones.
How about
pick up anybody from the 49ers for that was the 49ers were, I think that they were legitimately thinking about keeping Trey Lance on the roster, because what they were getting offered from everybody else probably was no better than a 7, maybe a 6, and then all of a sudden Dallas with a 4. Of course, we're doing it right away. And I mean, the Cowboys made the 49ers decision for them. I can't say no to that. But anyway, with a player like Mitchell, who right now he's their running back too. It's obvious, and the other guys will have their chance to develop and establish themselves. But as we speak right now, he's the running back too. That's an extremely important role on this football team. You're trying to win a Super Bowl. Your willingness to move him, the cost that you would expect to move him, is probably much higher than whatever somebody is willing to pay for him, right? So say that the league's price is a 5. I think the 49ers price definitely needs to be at least a 4, maybe even a 3 at this point, which means at this very point, before the other guys have a chance to develop at training camp and in the preseason, because you have to prioritize your Super Bowl winning chances first. And to win the Super Bowl, you have to survive the marathon to get there. And to survive the marathon to get there, your second running back better be very competent.
I agree. I also don't know who's going to be returning kicks.
Yeah, so I think that it's going to be one of the more fascinating developments of the season. I just saw Justin Tucker said that he put on 3.8 pounds to handle physicality. I don't know. Kickers are weird.
That's sarcasm, right?
Yeah. No, okay. I just saw a tweet, so I don't know.
That has to be sarcasm. That's good sarcasm if it's sarcasm.
But dude, these guys are precise guys. I wouldn't be shocked either way.
All right, I'll do some research.
Look it up. Let's check it out. Because I mean, when he's talking about his leg strength and every blade of grass matters, and he wants to fade on the ball to be a couple inches, and I could see how he wants to make sure that he's at a very precise weight and a level of strength to be able to control. I mean, he controls the football better than anybody that we've ever seen. So he's obviously very scientific about this. Have you found it?
Yes, but now I'm scrolling through this. Hold on. I did find it. 3.8. Here we go. Now, yeah, I don't know how to. This is one of those that you got to see it, because he says it might be surprising to a lot of you guys and a lot of my teammates, because I don't tend to hang out in the locker room too frequently. I've mixed it up a couple times. I've gotten in there, but now I've got to get some more shrugs, get the traps going a little bit, just to make sure I'm prepared for a little more contact. When asked if he's added more weight, Tucker said, quote, "I have put on like 3.8 pounds. Can you guys tell? Probably not. I'll leave it at that."
I don't know. I think kickers are crazy enough to be serious. And if he wasn't that precise of a kicker, I would say maybe it's sarcasm. But when you watch him kick, I mean, he is hitting a target on the net. It's not like he's kicking to kick it in between the uprights. He's kicking to nail a target, and he almost always gets it. So obviously precision matters to that guy. The point is that these guys are probably going to be in more contact heavy situations. Yeah. The Chiefs are talking about using Justin Reed to kick instead of Harrison Butker. Here you have Justin Tucker talking about bulking up a little bit. So that just underscores this is going to be a different situation. It's going to be much more of a play, right? Like a play from scrimmage than the standard old kickoff where stuff was a little bit further separated.
Yeah. So people who have listened to me talk about this the last couple of weeks, and maybe you heard me say this, David, I don't know, but the estimate is that you're going to lose about 4 offensive plays per team. Now that the clock will be running more, now that the kickoff is going to be a play that the clock runs on instead of a touchback and a play that the clock does not run on. So I don't know if that will affect, especially like play caller head coaches like Kyle. I don't know if that will affect how they look at this play, right? They're going to lose some offensive plays. And, my theory, and I asked Kyle about this a couple of weeks ago, my theory was that running backs would be good fits for this type of return because it's going to be more about who can negotiate and find a hole like a running back than it is going to be about straight line speed. But then watching the 49ers in minicamp, teams are not going to be kicking the ball straight in the air to the returner. They're going to be doing these like line drive, bounce, squibs, and try to get the guy to either stumble picking it up, right? Because he's got his eyes up on the return. That one of the differences between this rule, there's a few differences between the rule in the NFL and the XFL rule. And one of the rules in the XFL was that if the ball hit the ground, you had to wait 3 seconds. Everybody else, except for the returner, had to give the returner 3 seconds to pick up the ball. Now I understand why the NFL would not adopt that. Now you got to have, not only is the kickoff new, now we got a 3-second timer that we're going to have to try and negotiate and wait and indicate to people the guy's got 3 seconds to pick it up. But what that did was it de-incentivized teams from putting the ball on the ground. Well, the NFL does not have that de-incentivizer. And so we saw it nonstop in the Niners practice. They were kicking the ball on the ground, line drive, kicking it to the returner. And now all of a sudden it's really critical that you have a person back there that is comfortable in that spot. And that to me feels most like a punt returner skill, right? Pick up the ball, know where the ball is, know where the other guys are, not be panicked. The funny thing about the Niners is that they do have the single most qualified player for this new kickoff, and it's Christian.
Yes.
And they might have the number 2 most qualified player, and it's Deebo. And they probably won't use either one of them on this.
Well, I don't know about that because the league's goal, and if the 49ers agree that the league has achieved this goal, was to make this less dangerous, right? So the reason that you wouldn't put the top tier guys back there all the time, although they've had Deebo back there returning kicks in the past, would be because you don't want him getting hit by somebody with a 40-yard running start. That shouldn't be the case anymore. If you're not afraid to put Deebo Samuel out on a normal play from scrimmage where players have reasonably short head starts, why would you be afraid to put him out there on the kick return? You could gain just as much of an advantage on the kick return as you can on the play from scrimmage, right? So that's going to be up to how the 49ers treat the injury risk versus the reward, which
part of this is going to be, do you trust your blockers too, right? Like, do you have a good sense for who your blockers are? Kyle, when I asked him about a couple weeks ago, said he thought it'd be big guys. Well, I think big guys are going to be at a disadvantage because you're blocking 53 1/3 yards, not just between the hash marks like they're used to. So I think that's going to be a challenge. Like, the defender's going to have 5 yards of separation to try and put a juke move on the blocker. It's not a right guard blocking a nose tackle that's right in front of him. So I think that's going to be one challenge. The other thing is, one of the other rule differences is that in the XFL, the kicker could kick and then just start running. In the NFL, the kicker cannot cross the 50 until the ball is caught. So my other thing is, I don't know if the kicker's going to be in on as many plays as everybody thinks the kicker is going to be in on.
He'll be like the deep safety.
Also, he doesn't want to be in on these plays. He doesn't have a nose for the ball. Okay?
Well, no, now that he has got 3.8 more pounds of muscle, he wants to be crossing the 50 early. Well,
I mean, these are critical. These are think about what is the least depth that you have at any position on a football field. It is your kicker and your punter.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's true. Remember when the 49ers in the biggest game of the season, must win, lost their punter. So Robbie Gould had a punt. Wisnowski
was that the Rams week 17 game? Is that what that was?
Yeah, week 8. It was the first Week 18. It was the first of the 17-game season. And so Wisnowski is hurt. Gold has to punt and kick, but also they had to have Kyle Juszczyk hold. That's
right.
That was more treacherous than people thought. So they go on the drive. Garoppolo hits Deebo, and then he hits Jennings to not tie the game, to bring them within one. They had to kick the extra point with Juszczyk holding, no Wisnowski in there, and that can mess a lot of processes up. It's not a short extra point anymore like it used to be either.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people were probably so elated that they had almost tied the game. They probably overlooked the fact that something could have gone wrong. You know, Twitter just sent me a highlight from 2003. I don't remember watching this game or seeing the highlights in person. It was the last week of the season. The Saints needed to win to keep their season alive, and they're at their own 20. And I think Aaron Brooks was their quarterback, and that former Oregon Duck. And they ran like a Cal Stanford-like play. They ran a multilateral play that ended in a touchdown, and they were down 20-13. So it was 20-19. And then remember John Carney, kicker, misses the extra point. The 70-yard touchdown with no time left to save their season until they missed the extra point.
That's terrible. I do think, yeah, that's terrible.
Completely pushed it. It was so bad. Can't believe that, man. So anyway, go look that up. That is one of the crazier NFL finishes that you'll see. Did you have anything else on your list? I'm trying to remember. We talked about Aiyuk. We talked about the kick. I wanted to talk. You've done a great job covering the kick return stuff.
Yeah, big special teams guy.
Hey, I mean, and so, you know who else was obsessed with special teams? He's no longer employed as a head coach, but Bill Belichick. So
good company.
There was a time when he gave an answer last year. I think it was like a 12-minute answer. It was absurdly long. Did you see it about long snapping?
Yeah.
It was so good. You must have been in heaven when that happened.
No, I mean, I've gotten into this one because, you go to minicamp. I'm not going to evaluate the offensive linemen. I wasn't that fired up about it. I'm kind of into this new kickoff thing because the reason I'm into the new kickoff is because I know how uncomfortable it must make the head coaches like Kyle, like most coaches who don't want to think about special teams, who just want to get the ball in their quarterback's hand and not let anybody else screw anything up. And I think it's going to be a bit of a mess at first. I don't think they're going to block it well. I don't think they're going to cover it well. I don't think they're going to kick it well. I think it's going to be an entertaining mess. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We did have some questions here, and if you have any other topics, David, throw them in. But a few super chats and some questions to get to. Joe says, speaking of odd men out, what do you think we should expect from the safety position, specifically with Jair Brown? You want to take that?
Well, I think we need to see when Talanoa Hufanga comes back first.
You thought he looked pretty good. You thought he looked bigger, didn't you?
I thought he looked bigger, and I told him that on the field, and he was like, "I'm trying, man."
3.8 pounds.
Yeah, 3.8 pounds. I didn't expect him to want to divulge much in the press conference, but I asked him in the presser just to see if he would elaborate a little bit, and he said, I think he repeated that he was trying, but it's a balance, right? He doesn't want to be too big, even if he's adding a little bit of weight, because that's a multi-responsibility position at safety. I do think that there's going to be a very, very concerted effort schematically to stop the run this year. That was a big problem. It's been a bit of an issue with Steve Wilkes, really everywhere he's been a defensive coordinator. He hadn't coordinated good run defenses. The 49ers dropped all the way down to the bottom 5 in that category. So I think that getting somebody like Talanoa Hufanga back, making sure that he could be that missile and then he's strong enough to fight off some blocks near the point of attack is going to be big. I think their linebackers are going to be big. Obviously, they got a revamped defensive line. But if we're talking specifically about the safety position, I'm excited to see what Malik Mustafa is going to be for San Francisco. I mean, he's built like a mini linebacker. Fred's already calling him a mini Dre Greenlaw. When I met him in person in the media room right after the draft, he's impressive physically. You're like, okay, this he's already has NFL caliber muscle on him. So it's not like he's going to need to be in that weight room all too long, and he was super versatile. He played a bunch of different positions, this kind of Panther roving position for Wake Forest. So how quickly can Mustafa crack into that lineup? How healthy is Talanoa Hufanga going to be? I think that those are two questions that give a nice little window for Jair Brown, who's impressed the 49ers as well. So right now, they haven't signed a veteran safety. They offered a contract to Rayshawn Jenkins. He signed with Seattle instead. He said the Washington State tax situation was better. So that's where Rayshawn Jenkins went. They hosted Julian Blackmon, who re-signed with the Colts. So at one point this season, they were really interested in adding a safety. I don't know if drafting Malik Mustafa and seeing Talanoa Hufanga recover at a good rate has made them change their minds.
Being Butterfly comment says that the Aiyuk Daily account was made March 2024. It has 2 posts, both made today. Yeah, so maybe it is just he's getting a lot of flack from people, and they want to put out some positive fan engagement.
That's a really good, astute observation. Being Butterfly is a great viewer. Being Butterfly's on my channel a lot, so shout out there. That's good intel, and it does seem like there has been some sort of inflection point where Aiyuk wants to get at least some sort of message out, right?
Yep. James says, James with a super chat. Thanks, James. Says, how much could BA's asking price go up from this year to next? Seems like it's at the pinnacle now, mostly because the wide receiver market is blowing up now. How much could the price go up? I've said for a while, I'm not saying this is the only thing that can happen by any stretch, but I have thought, David, that him playing on the 5th-year option, I'm not going to belabor it. We've talked about it, has been at least a part of the equation here in the sense that I thought it was a potential real outcome. Yeah. I still think it is. I don't think it feels like he's got to get a deal done. But what do you think about the cost?
I don't think that the market is the top of it. I don't think is exploding if you consider the Jefferson deal to be an outlier. That's the only one that surpassed Tyreek Hill. What's happening is that the top of it is solidifying, so that there are a lot of deals getting closer to Tyreek Hill. So we saw AJ Brown, and we see a lot of these deals in the 30s as far as fully guaranteed money goes. So instead of just having a few really big ones and everybody's stuck behind, if we're going to talk APY in the low 20s, now you're getting things at the top really, really solidified, which raises the floor definitely for Brandon Aiyuk. How much where that ceiling's going to be, that's still really TBD. So it almost makes it, it's never safe to wait a year because you get hurt. But I think based on all this aggregation of contracts at a fairly high amount of fully guaranteed money, assuming he could stay healthy for another year, I think that, he has got a solid floor. He's not going to drop below that. And maybe by next year, there'll be a few more ceiling breaking contracts firmly above Tyreek Hill's number that will pay off for Brandon Aiyuk. But it's a risk because this is not a video game where you get to turn injuries off, and guys want to get that big signing bonus now. You've worked so hard your whole life. Why would you want to wait a year? So that's why typically deadline pressure spurs action, because Aiyuk is incentivized to get something done. And so are the 49ers, because guess what? They signed a deal with him. The one I projected up on the screen about an hour ago, they could lower his cap hit. They could open up even more space to carry over. And they're all about pushing. It's a 0 interest loan. I keep on saying that. They're all about pushing this into the future, just as a financially savvy move for them.
Well, and by that same token, they could do the same thing next year if they were to wait a year and then push that big money back further, right? Like you delay by a year then when the contract really hits your cap in a significant way if you end up waiting. Yeah. It's not a disaster for the 49ers, even if the price goes up a little bit on receivers next year.
No. Yeah, it is not. And the salary cap, the situation is fungible. Let's put it that way. And it's going to be fascinating to see which direction this goes, especially in the context of them paying Brock Purdy.
Super chat Ricky says, I'm not convinced in the 49ers D line. That's my opinion. What's the likelihood that we make a trade to get stronger in that position? Maybe depth. They made 2 trades on the defensive line last year.
Yeah, they've already made a trade for a tackle, Malik Collins. I think where they're right now, where it's still a question mark, is tackle. And specifically the nose tackle type to play the run. That's also been a problem. They haven't had that type of player effective since DJ Jones left after 2021. So they have a couple options. Kalia Davis is entering his third year. Fans are hoping that he turns the corner and becomes that guy for the 49ers. They signed an undrafted free agent out of Florida Atlantic named Evan Anderson, who's might be the biggest player that has ever put on a uniform for this regime, over 320 pounds. And that, you look at his frame and you say maybe he can become that fire hydrant run stopper in the middle. And they also have Shaquille Brown, who was with Tennessee last year, was hurt, but is healthy now. And he quite possibly has the most imposing frame on the team. I'm sure that you've seen him out there practice. He tried out and they were blown away by his tryouts. They signed him. One of those three guys works out. DJ Jones was a 6th-round pick, so it's entirely possible that a less heralded pickup can work out. They've even compared Kalia to DJ before. You don't pick up if none of those guys works out. You still have that hole on your defensive line. You don't have that exact body type that can combat the run. In that case, yeah, maybe that's a spot that you try to plug with a trade.
Last comment here that I've got queued up, which is from Kenny. He says, I can unsubscribe from so many if this was on every day. It was funny.
Nice. Okay.
If it's self-serving and funny, I'll definitely read it.
We'll take that into consideration.
Yeah. It's just compliments and humor. Easy click.
That was good.
Anything you got to add here?
No, I think I've got to go eat dinner. I'm 2 hours ahead of you. So it was good. We're 1:06. Man, that went by quick.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, we'll keep Kenny's comment in mind. How about that?
Yes. Great. Sounds good. I'll see you soon, David. And we'll see everybody else soon too.
When do you leave to Portugal?
June 30th.
All right. We get something in before
we can
then,
do something
for
before
sure.
then. Yep.
Cool.
All right. Let everybody see you, David.